Hi, everyone. Welcome to IDEAChatCNY New York. My name is Dee, and I will be hosting today's Idea Chat Central New York. Now, Idea Chat is a chat that is created by RVD Idea. RVD Idea is an initiative at Syracuse University's campus to help students explore entrepreneurship. You can learn more about IDEA on our website. I'll put the website up right now so you can see that. There's a link to the website. Um, yeah, and so today we have a awesome event planned for you. We're going to be talking to Lorne Covington, principal of Noir. And just so you know, from here on out, from this whole week, we'll be having idea chats every day. You can check the schedule of the idea chat here. I'll put that up on screen so you can see the schedule. We're going to jump right into it. So I'm going to bring Lorne of Noir onto the screen, and he'll tell you a little bit about himself and what he does. And then we'll get to ask him some questions.
There we go.
Hi.
Hi there.
So, welcome to Idea Chat, Central New York. Um, can you tell our viewers a
Thank
little
you.
bit about yourself and what you do, and a little bit about Norfolk?
Sure. Well, I'm Lorne Covington. I live just outside of Syracuse, where I have my studio. It's sort of hard to say what I do. It's not a real good sound bite. I've been working the last few years with sort of large-scale, immersive, participatory environments, installations, a lot of visual, reactive, interactive kinds of things. So that's principally been working with projection art, graphics generated art, moving into some more sort of informational and play kinds of displays and installations. And Noir is sort of a very loose organization with myself and Bill Safe, who is also a user experience designer. And we're sort of exploring this whole new area of gestural interactions. How do you interact with the space instead of just a device or a screen? So those are a whole new areas that nobody knows how to do right yet. So that's what Noirflux is sort of about.
All right, so you mentioned that you're kind of exploring interacting with space. Can you give a little, and also participatory media, can you talk a little bit more about what participatory media is and what do you mean by interacting in space?
Well, that's sort of the idea of uh, the ability now that we have with the various technologies that have gotten really cheap is that we can sense where people are and how they're moving and how they're gesturing and what their body motions are and that kind of thing. So we've suddenly got an avenue for input of that kind of thing into programs, whether it's just informational play, fun, whatever. So that sort of opened up this whole new possibilities. I think it's probably best if I just demonstrate something really quick
Are you
on the screen behind
demonstrating?
me so you can get a better idea. That's right. That's why I'm sitting here with this light behind me. All right, this is what I call neon swim. And as you can see, you're sort of seeing some white lines here that it's sort of an abstract representation of what my body's doing. And so as I'm moving here in front of the screen, my body's position is being read, and that's being used as input into these graphics generation algorithms. So you can see it's sort of real time, large scale, really sort of fun things to come in and do. Because when you're standing here, this fills your field of vision, so it's sort of a very immersive experience that you really can't get any other way. This is sort of a novel thing. You couldn't do this with a controller. You sort of do this with your whole body. So that kind of thing. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. So, with that, I know that you have already some videos that you'd like to show and like, kind of talk about more about your installation work that you've done with Noir Flux. Did you want to hop into that right now?
Sure. Perhaps I might be able to see something if you pop up that Navier Stokes video. Navier Stokes, by the way, is the name of a fluid dynamics equation that is used for simulating smoke and liquids and airflow. So that's, I guess they'll have to click the play button to see that work. So what's happening is my body position is being read by the camera, and it's being used to inject hot spots into that fluid. So then you see this resulting fluid flow. So it's sort of like you're moving and causing this disturbance in this fluid. This is just one person, what I'm doing here and in this video. But once you get more people, because the large scale part of the interaction, you can actually start playing with each other through this medium. That's actually a lot more fun. I don't know if anybody got that to play or not.
So, what is the kind of purpose for a work like Noir Stokes, Navier Stokes, sorry? What is the kind
I'm
of
sorry.
purpose of the work that you're doing, especially here with the Navier Stokes?
Well, this is meant to be sort of exploratory play. I think is a good term for it. That it's I consider it a piece of art, artwork, but that it's not artwork in the sense that the object is
Mhm.
what the art is. The art happens is what somebody can do in this space and how the space responds to them. That's why the tagline, my website is Art and Interaction, because it's actually that interactivity and how that interactivity is manifest. To me, is really a new kind of artwork that hasn't been possible before, and it enables people to become participatory in the creation of that artwork. I know that like you're the artist kind of thing is a little cliched, but what I found in these kinds of installations where people can come and do this kind of stuff, there's sort of that aha moment. It's really different than when you're sitting here watching a video, but when you're really here and you're just moving and you're creating light and patterns and motion just through what you're doing, people sort of have that just aha moment. It's like, oh my goodness, how this is really cool. So to me, that's really gratifying, just to provide people with that kind of experience and those kinds of opportunities to do things, because it allows them to express themselves and participate in ways that they couldn't before. That this technology just makes possible. It never existed before.
So we have a comment that says that um, Cato feels like this could be a show in Vegas where you've actually, um, well, you've actually have in, have installations in the most in Syracuse and also um, in Museum in Rochester, and you've also had performances down in Kennedy Center in Washington D.C. Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yes. Yes, that was actually very early on. When I started experimenting with this, I had my prototype up at a friend of mine's studio, and it was a shared studio space. And some people were walking by and saw it and started playing with this kind of thing. And then walked up to me and said, we're doing a show at the Kennedy Center. Would you like to do this with us? I was like, let me think. And I said, yes, actually, I would. And so that initial show was a show they pretty much had in the can that was called Erase, the Loving Project. And so I sort of augmented their performances by making dancer reactive visuals. There's links on the website, that link that you just sent out, where you can actually sort of go to and see the shows. There's videos of them. So that was the idea there, is I was trying to augment their performances by doing interactive visuals that would track them and use their motions to sort of add to what the emotional component was of each piece uh, through the show. That was pretty successful, I thought. I think it worked really well, and it was very well received. And we ended up competing for and winning in a commission for a new piece, and that became a lot more ambitious. That's the affectations. That's the next piece on that page, where we sort of designed it around being able to have the dancers drive the interactivity from the get-go. Besides just the visuals, there was also a composer, James Harkins, who was a super collider, which is a real-time music synthesis language guru, who's done a lot of work with it. And so what happened is we actually worked into the dancers' costumes infrared tags, more or less, that I could track with the camera, and then analyzed their motions, and then took that motion information from each one of the dancers, and not only drove the visuals with it, but then that information was sent into James's real-time composition piece, so that the dancers were also able to influence the music that was being generated in real time. So that was really quite an interesting project, because it allowed both James and I to sort of create a framework for the dancers to work in, and then sort of selectively, by our orchestration of it, give them input so that they were dancing with the piece and the piece was responding to them, as well as they were dancing to the music. So it was sort of this very interesting sort of closed system where they got to play with each other. So that was really quite a learning experience.
How was that experience for you? Because we have a question here. I will add it onto the screen. Um, like, do you work with musicians at all? And you're actually a musician yourself, so can you talk a little bit about your
Yes.
because you talked about how the dancers can influence the composers in the affectations piece that you were doing. And so now this question is about musicians
Right.
and your work as a musician as well.
Well, in affectations, working with James, because he was creating all new music, and he had very sort of set ideas for what the piece should be like and what the emotional movement through the pieces were. So it was sort of interesting. He had never dealt with this kind of thing before, where we actually had to think, okay, where in the piece do the dancers get to play? You know, what do they influence? What pieces of the musical, aspects of the music? So it was sort of like being able to compose and then sort of give solos to people, but in far more complex ways than just what melody they were playing, because they were actually able to influence the tonality, timbre, sort of chordal aspects of the music, just by their body motions and what they were doing. So it was a whole new way to start thinking about this stuff, that as a musician, having composed before, it was just totally new, and it still is, and it's actually really sort of hard to do, because I am working on some musical pieces where I'm taking these technologies and this kind of input, and I want to give people the ability to do musically sort of what the same thing they can do visually with this. But because music is, at least things you want to listen to, tonal, structured kind of music, is a much more complicated system than just abstract graphics. It's really a interesting problem to tackle, and I'm actually looking for musicians that are more talented than I am to sort of explore this further. So if there's any out there.
All right, so you talked a bit about you're talking about before you talked a bit about the technology and how the technology is now um, available and becoming democratized, and it's allowing more people to be able to do this sort of experimentation with their body as an interface and kind of interacting with environment. Um, how how do you feel like this technology um, is changing art, and how do you feel like it will continue to change it, and where does Noir Flux fit into that future?
Well, the I think the surface is really just getting scratched, because this affordable technology has just come out. I mean, these techniques have been around since the 90s. The computers, sort of the high-end graphics workstations, got fast enough to sort of do this kind of stuff real time, but they were $100,000 systems. Now, a Kinect costs you $90 down at Walmart, and pretty much any PC or laptop is powerful enough nowadays to do this kind of stuff. So it's really just they're now ripe for exploration. And initially, the people that are dealing with it are sort of the tech savvy people like me, and those are not necessarily, as a rule, the most creative visual artists, music artists, those kinds of things. So I think it's going to take a little while for this access to these techniques to sort of propagate more into the various arts, because right now you're just sort of seeing tip of the iceberg. And as people and more people start playing with this thing, this kinds of stuff, I think they're going to develop techniques that nobody's thought of, and that's why it's really exciting to me, and that's why I'm trying everything I can possibly think of, just experimentally, to see where you can go with it.
Now I know that you have some more pieces, some more videos that you wanted to show about what you were doing, like what Noir Flux is doing. Which one would you like me to load up to talk about?
I'll tell you what. Let's see. Why don't we bring up the conf test one? This is a very, very rough uh, demo. You'll have to hit play on this one too, I guess. And this is just a simple example of, I'm using, again, it's just a Kinect, a depth camera here, that I'm using. This was designed to be a participatory piece for people in remote locations. So what would be happening is that we would be co-creating these graphics like you saw behind me in the other piece, except I would be able to see you and you would be able to see me in the piece while we're interacting through this sort of shared virtual space. So it's a way to, this was sort of an experiment of how to develop a connection between people in another location besides just a video chat way, but where we were actually involved in a common sort of play and exploration space. I may have lost your audio there for a moment. So again, that's just a very simple demo, but that's one of the areas we've been exploring, is taking these technologies so that we can have multi-person, multi-site participatory interactive experiences. So Bill and I are currently talking about multi-city installations for people in different cities, in different parts of the world, even to interact through public art. These spaces would be in different areas around the world.
That's something that's interesting to me specifically because of just the way that a lot of people feel like technology is breaking people apart, not allowing them to interact. And so I think it's amazing that you are taking, like Norfolk is taking technology and making it so people would want to interact with each other more instead of
Right.
how did you? I know that.
Well, part of the problem, for me, part of the problem with the technology is because I think it's a lot of those criticisms are currently true when you've got everybody doing this, with their smartphones. But to some degree, that's always been around because I'm sensitive. I've got a 10-year-old daughter, but I had my face stuck in books too back when I was a kid, which could be very somewhat asocial. So this is perhaps gotten a little more prevalent in more places. I wish everybody read that much. But I think it's sort of what you do with it. It's sort of, to me right now, the form factor is really what's isolating and can make sort of an asocial experience. what the technologies now can do is one of my mantras is get off the screen. I want things to get out of this and out of this and into this around us, so that our environments are more inviting to social participation and can open those doors to interacting with people in other parts of the world in just really sort of fun ways and sort of visceral ways, not just textual or with still frames or little tiny videos. I think once we can start doing that kind of thing, it's going to make our environments more like we sort of developed for. That it's going to be more like a kind of social, village kind of setting. Finally, getting to what McLuhan, called the global village. That I think that can be a very positive way for these technologies to be applied. But there's some downsides,
Yeah.
of
I just
course.
want to let everybody know, like if you look down, ooh, I can't point to it. Down below Lauren's place on the screen, there's a question button. So if you have any questions for him, you can start sending them in and we'll start queuing them up here shortly. But I think there's some more videos that you wanted to show. Which one would you like for me to load up now?
Well, actually, um, let me. Uh, why not? Let me show a little something
Ooh,
behind
another
me here again.
demo. I love demos.
Another demo. Okay, this is an example of sort of taking the technology and again the sort of doing things that you might normally just do with a computer or with a device like a pad or something. And this is a piece that is at the most right now. Um, and I call it the unseen sun. It's sort of a sun explorer. This is a way of sort of taking, again, these responsive environments and allowing people to do very playful sort of exploratory learning with this. This is data that is coming from NASA satellite called the Solar Dynamics Observatory. And you probably can't see it very well there, but what's happening is I can just sort of gesture in and pick a temperature and a wavelength that I want to look at the sun at, and then just wave my hand around and sort of investigate different parts and see what's happening in these different wavelengths and temperatures on the sun. And it's a way to involve people, particularly non-readers, kids, and some of those that might just be put off by sort of the heavy textual base uh, kind of things that science is normally presented with, and just allow them to see, like, look, this is really what's sort of going on in the sun, and unlike when you're just reading it in a book or it's on a screen, a computer screen, when it's right here and this is happening in my personal space, I think that makes it a very different thing. It's sort of, you almost feel what you're doing with it. So it's not just necessarily the kind of art that I think this stuff really impacts, as it is the kind of sort of experiential learning possibilities that it opens up. And particularly because you can do this with a group and people can come up here and start showing each other different things about what's going on, then it becomes sort of a social exploration process. So that's sort of another different direction this stuff can go in.
Okay. So we have a question here from Miles. He's
Ah,
asking,
how did I think to use the Kinect's camera in this? Well, actually, when I started doing this kind of stuff, the Kinect didn't exist. And so I had to sort of invent some techniques, and there were some other people had developed some techniques for doing sort of similar thing using infrared cameras, and that's what both of those dance performance pieces at the Kennedy Center were done. We're actually not using Kinects at all; those are all using infrared cameras. The Kinect came out, just a few years ago, and I immediately looked at it and said, "Well, that's going to make things a lot easier," and so it was sort of a no-brainer. However, that being said, if you go try to take a Kinect and download some of the software to use it, you can't do this with it, actually. And it's sort of a problem because the Kinect was really designed for couch potatoes and sort of living room interaction, where it's sitting underneath the television, which is over there, and I'm out here in front of it, and it wants to read my hands and gestures. So there's a problem that you can't get close to the screen, and because I wanted this kind of immersive, participatory, first-person experiential media, um, that they just didn't work that way. So what I had to do was actually write sort of my own software to use the camera in a different way, because otherwise the camera would have to be here right in the middle of things, and I would have to be standing back at least 5 or 6 feet from it. So I can sort of show you, maybe. So what I did is up in the corner of the screen, it's a little hard to see, but it's up there on the rafter, is the depth camera. It's not a Kinect, it's something sort of, it's right there. And it's looking out along the front of the screen and the area out in front of it. And because it's looking from that angle, then it actually can see my hand touch all the way into touching the screen. And I can be here and be doing this kind of stuff, and it reads it all. And oddly enough, very, very few people have decided that this is really a cool thing to do with it, because there aren't any packages that you can download and use the Kinects this way, or any of the depth cameras this way. But I am happy to share my code with anyone that is interested in doing these kinds of things. So thank you for your question, Miles.
We have
Hope that answered
another
it.
question. I'll put it on screen.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, certainly. Well, I mean, that was sort of what I got into a little bit when I was talking about the conf test, that video that showed me sort of superimposed in there. That was part of an overall exploration thing we were doing to facilitate. It was actually something that was funded by a company that wanted to look into tying their global offices together with something we called a virtual water cooler, which was a way for people to socialize and sort of get to know the people in the other offices better. But at the same time, while that sort of fun was going on, if they started having ideas and wanted to start collaborating through that channel, that we could enable this. So we've developed some prototypes of systems that allow these kinds of things to happen, but that use more like the sun, that kind of stuff, to where you can sort of open things. There's a floating world, let me show you, of things that you can sort of select and further explore. Some of you might have seen this at the talk I gave at SU. Here it comes. I'll change the camera a
So
little
for
bit
those
for
who are
this.
wondering, the question was, what about I'm having a hard time reading the question. What about the possibility of real-time collaboration between musicians and/or artists in different locations? So that's what we're on right now.
Right. So, well, what you can see back here is what's called a force-directed graph, and this is real-time data lookup of Wikipedia stuff. And it's looking down all the different related pages off of some topic, and then building this graph of what's happening here. You can see that it's moving as I move. That's because it's doing what's called a virtual reality wall simulation. So for me, where I'm standing, it looks like I'm actually moving through this three-dimensional graph. And I can sort of gesture to things and pull up, other topics to explore. And so this is sort of a data wall kind of thing going on. And what we worked with is the ability to then, while we can be doing this collectively in different areas, to be able to do gestural sort of menu kinds of things that I was doing with the sun, but then also be able to touch an input point and say it pulls up a QR code that I then take my phone out, bang, and my phone is now an input device into this real-time collaboration space, this virtual collaboration space. So I can start putting in text and other imagery or things like that, or viewing if I needed to pull up a document or some kind of thing there, that we could do that and multi-site with multiple people involved in it. And that's sort of a collaboration on the sense of like, idea collaboration, which now on the art side, pardon me, the phone's ringing. There we go. One of the things that is difficult with real-time sort of, particularly music collaboration, I don't know if that was the intent of your question or not, is that there's this thing called latency, and it's a killer for music. Visual collaboration is pretty cool, or anything that you can tolerate a little bit of a lag in. This is why people don't jam over the internet, because even those little tiny delays, when you're trying to monitor and play with each other, they can cause it just to fall apart. So that's really sort of a problem. Musical collaboration is going to be tough, but every other kind of collaboration, this kind of thing can really facilitate.
We have another question. The question is from Miles, and it's, have you thought of any other applications for this technology? I'll put it on the screen.
Oh, only a few dozen. It's I mean, really, it's one of those kinds of things that once you start looking at your world with this in mind, you start seeing a lot of possibilities that I don't think are really being explored very much yet. One of my big things, what I'm really, really hep on, is responsive environments. Again, getting off the screen and make this whole our whole built environment much more like a natural environment in how much information it's presenting to us, how much it's telling us about the world, and allowing us to interact in the way that we want to with what it's telling us about the world, both just aesthetically and informationally. So once you sort of take that perspective, it's at sort of a very pedantic level, it's pretty easy to take one of these cameras, say, and just stick it over your workspace or your desk or your bed or wherever. And then it's pretty much a trivial exercise to go calibrate it for different things in different spots, such that you can say, oh, that's my stereo over there. This kind of gesture means that to the stereo. This turns this on. I want to point to that light to turn it off and on. It knows my presence in the room. It knows what my activity levels are in the room, so I can have the room adapt to me. I can set it for what I want it to do in these different cases. So everything from it becoming sort of turning my entire workspace into more or less a virtual multi-touch area, gesturing things on the desktop, touching things on a screen, to making it something that I can just play in the area with, that it brings me more information about the world. Those possibilities are just waiting for somebody to come and start trying to do it.
Now, I have a question just off of that question. Now,
Okay.
I know that you actually studied animal behavior. So I was wondering if,
Yes.
and you actually spent a year doing behavioral intelligence and language acquisition work with dolphins. Have you thought of a way
Yes, I did.
to kind of combine this kind of technology and what you're doing now with Noir Flux with animal behaviors? That would be interesting to hear.
Well, actually it was my experience with studying animals, and that means humans too. Specifically, the discipline is called ethology, and that's the comparative study of animal behavior. So you're always looking at different species and how they differ, and what different and why they differ behaviorally in the ways that they do. And you find, well, these guys are social and they share all of these same kind of social patterns, right? In tremendously different animals, but you'll find similar structures in their socialization. So you start thinking, okay, well, these are ways that we're really built. These are ways how socialism, socialist behavior, socialized behavior works. Um, so you say that, okay, there's really good reasons for that because so many different animals are doing sort of the same thing. And then you realize that must be a pretty deep part in us. So instead of sort of turning the technology on that, it's more a matter to me of taking why we behave the way that we do and what is really ingrained in us, and then using that light to shine on technology and say, how can we better use technology to serve sort of the ways that we are and what our needs are. So it's sort of the other way. And to me, again, that's part of the environment. You know, my whole drive toward making better, more responsive environments is I think we'll be healthier and happier if we actually have environments that are stimulating to us, that are sort of providing us with more opportunities for being connected to the world. So I think that comes from our need of having evolved as very social animals. So that's how I see this technology sort of serving that. Now, if you're talking about animal behavior, that's a whole nother topic to get into. I could go on for hours about dolphins, so I won't do
Oh, I love dolphins.
that. And well, you should.
Okay, so if anyone has any more questions, you can use the questions. Ooh, I'm pointing in the wrong direction. The questions button right there,
It's down
down
there,
there
so it's
someplace.
something.
All right, but until then, I know that we have more videos to show. What are you interested in showing now?
Well, I think probably the um, thing that I can't really demo very well, it's better if you look at the video, is the VR statue. This is literally was my first test, okay, of doing a virtual reality system using the depth cameras. So if you play that, um, what you got to realize that you're looking at is actually this screen, okay, this piece of spandex back here. I'm holding the camera to my head, and I'm walking around the screen, in front of the screen. But because the camera tracks where my head is, I have built and I've built a 3D model of that statue in those boxes inside the computer. What I can do is project on the screen what I would be seeing if I was actually looking at those objects with my head in that place relative to where
That's
those
so
objects
cool.
were. So this is a technique that's been around since the 90s at least, and it's called a VR wall, virtual reality wall. Um, But again, normally this was many hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this. I'm doing this with a $90 Connect, an $800 projector, and some spandex, okay, and a PC. So, and you can see as I walk around, this was an early test, it's a little jumpy and whatnot, but that it looks like I'm actually walking around that stuff. So what you can do, it's sort of the reverse of what I was talking about in that these technologies will also allow, besides making this environment a richer place, allows us to go to sort of completely created environments where the physical possibility doesn't really mean anything, and that is almost so unlimited that it's hard to conceive of what you can do with it, because we've been so constrained about thinking what we can do in a physical realm. That when we are confronted by things where boxes can float around in space and go through statues, that suddenly just the thinking about what kind of interesting places do I want to go or do I want to create for other people to experience. So that's sort of a little tiny demonstration of sort of the possibilities that again the same technology makes possible. And oh wait, where is it? Hold on, as does this guy, which I'm sure some of you have seen. Um, this is an Oculus Rift. And this is, you can sort of see the little things in there. This is what's called a head mount display. You strap it on, and it's got displays for each eye. But it's got trackers built into it so that as you turn your head, it knows it and reports that back to the program generating the graphics. So as you turn your head, you look around inside of a virtual world. Um, so it's sort of completely immersive, and it's in 3D. And the cool thing about this is they finally made it fast enough and low latency enough that it doesn't make you really motion sick. And it's $300. So again, that's technology that used to be tens of thousands of dollars, that you can now just go on the web and get one. And a really interesting happens when you combine these two technologies. You take this guy up there, your $90 Connect, which can track where you are moving around in space, and that's how it was doing that VR statue. But I can put that on, and instead of just having to always look at this screen to be able to look into that virtual world, I can now walk around and freely move in that virtual world. It's literally a holodeck. So for about $390 plus a PC, okay. And again, there's so much that can be explored there, and people are just sort of starting. I don't think people even have an idea of where you can take these things yet.
We have another. Do you want to keep going and showing some more of the videos that you have loaded up?
Let's see. What do we got? The oh, you won't be able to hear it. Oh, dang it. I had something, another demo prepped, but I realized you won't be able to hear it. One of the things I'm working on that's combined, well, I can show it to you. You can
Go
imagine the
ahead.
sounds. Although, because I think they light up at least, or change color or something, since you won't be able to hear the sound. Oh, they are behind me. Again, very simple, sort of brain dead demo of this, again, as a VR wall thing. So these guys sort of respond to me. Now they're moving by themselves right now, and my cord's not very long, so I can't get over here. And these are sort of, Dan Pacheco calls these the musical Cheerios. But what it allows me to do is these guys are sort of floating in space in front of me. All right, now I can take my hand and gesture toward them. And you can't hear it, but when I point at them, you might see that they're sort of changing colors and getting bigger. So whenever I do that, it plays music. So what this is, it's a virtual space that I can sort of reach out and touch and play things like this. So it's created a virtual musical space that I can play with and make sounds with. So I'm working with taking this idea along with the Rift. When you put the Rift on, you're suddenly standing in this area of all of these objects that are just floating in space. And you can then you can jump and hit and touch and use sort of your full body to play music on all of these objects that are in this area, this virtual world that you're in. So that's another place to take this.
Now that's pretty cool. I could imagine like just like the workout I would get just.
Yeah, well, it really does something different when you're involving your body, and again, when you're in this thing where to me, a magic thing happens when stuff is in your personal space. It's more like that thing that happens when you're interacting with a person, and that it's really sort of enveloping and immersive. It does become a different experience.
Now, I had the pleasure of meeting you at Mind Labs, where had you were actually displaying some of your work, um, and it was interesting to see how people responded to your work and how people were interacting with it. So you had people that jumped right in and was just like, "Ooh, this is," and then you had some people that were a little, reserved. Um, why do you think some people are a little reserved and a little apprehensive? Maybe they don't understand what's happening. Like, do you see that sometimes when people interact with your work and you wonder why that
Um,
is?
it's self-consciousness mostly. I think more than sort of not getting it. I mean, some people are just like the visual stuff. Some people are just not very visual, and they sort of like, oh well, that's nice. There's things moving. Other people are like, wow, what complicated, cool, intricate patterns. So it pushes different buttons, and that's why I'm really interested in exploring the music. I sort of a sideline, I have done and I'm working on a piece that is purely auditory. There's no visuals whatsoever. It's on my website. Um, I'll send a link to that. Here we go. At least you can read about it. So people have different sensory modalities is one thing. The other part is that a lot of people have performance anxiety, particularly at some places like the Mind Lab. This is in public, and so people don't want to look stupid, or some people are more averse to it than others. So some people will jump in and are not afraid of just trying things, even if they don't know how it works or anything. And other people are sort of like, well, a little more reserved. I have found very little correlation, though, about how reserved people are initially and then how involved they will
Mhm.
still get. A lot of times it's the people that were just sort of very tentative or sort of like, oh, and just sort of doing this and that then spend 15 minutes and just going crazy with the stuff. So it's hard to tell.
So for those who are interested in um, reading about some of the more auditory stuff, you can see the link right there below.
Yes, that was is. Say this is one of the things it's actively working on. It's about a 20-foot square area with speakers in the four corners of the area, and cameras that sort of point into that area. And depending upon the kinds of motions and relative motions of people and how active they get and how rhythmic they're being, it actually changes the music that's being played and generated in real time. So it's a way for people to, again, just do musically the similar thing to what was happening visually, interactively.
Now, I wanted to give you a chance to show any other demos or videos wanted to um, that you wish to show.
Let's see here. I think I've pretty much covered things. There, it wouldn't be a little redundant. Um, there's, hang on here. Yeah, I wish I could show some of the Rift stuff. That's the headset stuff. That's the trick. Um, but the other area, one thing that I wanted to go into, which we haven't talked about yet, really, is I've got a background in robotics. I was vice president of engineering of a robotics company in Silicon Valley, and so to me, there is going to be a link between these things. That people sort of think of robots as being sort of anthropomorphic, human-like things that will walk around us and take care of us or be our servants or something like that. And I don't think that's really how it's going to work. I think what you're going to see is that besides just the virtual and projections and sort of information displays, that our environments are going to become more uh, not just personalized, but also sort of have their own personalities. So that I think we're going to see the way that these things are made more approachable to people is that they're going to sort of start having personalities their own. Um, it's like the Iron Man guy. What's his name? Jarvis or something that he's always talking to. His sort of omnipresent servant, uh, which has a personality, and that's going to sort of start tying these environments together, and sort of we're going to be responding to this thing, this AI, that's going to be responding back to us. I'm pretty sure that's the future reality because that really then pulls all of these convergence of these technologies, the information displays, responsive environments, sensing, AI, robotics, everything sort of into a piece. And I expect that's where we're going to wind up and start seeing that kind of stuff manifest pretty soon. Thank you, Miles.
Well, I want to thank you and for your time today And we just
My
enjoyed
pleasure.
your time today and everything you had to say about your work and the future of um, robotics and AI interactive environments. If anyone else is interested in learning more about Norflux and what they do, you can visit their website at norflux.com. I put it right there on the screen.
Yes. It's horribly out of date. We're working on a new one, really, any day now. It's going to be
Well, you
up.
know, when you're
But I do recommend if you can get by the most, go by the most, the Museum of Science and Technology in Syracuse, and play with the stuff firsthand. There's a couple other pieces I haven't gone into there, so it's pretty. Like to see what people think anyway. Always open to your suggestions and input.
speaking of suggestions, you can send your suggestions. You can contact Norflux and Lorne and also his partner at on Twitter, and I put the link right there so you can see it. So you
Thank
can
you.
get, ooh, here we go. You can find them
Yeah.
on Twitter right there. And before we sign off, do you have any advice for our listeners who would be interested in this space and how to get started?
It's Stanley Kubrick was asked if he had any advice to film students, and he said yes, make a film. I'm big in learn by doing. I mean, that's how I've always done it, and that's generally how you've got to do it when you're on the edge because nobody's been there before. So I'm really big on just grab the stuff and start doing it. And if you don't feel that you have the technical savvy, then grab somebody that does and get them interested, or make them tell you the knowledge and get going with it. I'm happy to really sort of help get anybody going or answer questions or anything like that or share code. So I'm Dan Pacheco, involved with him. I'm a research associate at the Mind Lab. So I really want to spread this stuff around. So just do it. Learn what you can. If you've got a crazy idea, try it. See where it goes.
Okay, Lauren. Well, thank you so much for talking with us today. Um,
You're welcome. Thank you very much. And thanks all of you guys for being here.
I'm going to take you off camera now. All right, everybody, that's our show today. I want to thank you so much for joining us. If you want to contact Northwest, you can find them on Twitter and also through their website, which we had put up previously. And if you're also interested in joining us this week for more of these chats, we're going to be talking to um, people all week. I think tomorrow we have on Jonathan Francis from Elite Daily. So that will be at 5 o'clock. You can view the schedule right here. All right. And you can also find me on Twitter at dcater on Twitter right here. Ooh, okay, I can't figure this out. Um, and you can also follow IdeaCues on Twitter, which again, IDEA is an initiative at Syracuse University's campus, a movement to help students get into entrepreneurship. And here is our site. All right, and with that, I thank you. Um, we'll like to see you tomorrow at 5 o'clock when we talk to Jonathan Francis of Elite Daily, and the topic of discussion will be how Gen Y looks at media. So again, thank you so much for joining us, and see you tomorrow.